we have our distinguished guest seated. Ben Llewellyn Jones, OBE, has been the British Deputy High Commissioner in Lagos, Nigeria since 2020. His role is to support and promote all UK priorities in Nigeria, but in particular, his focus is on economic development, climate change, trade and investment. He previously worked at the British High Commission in Abuja in the role of political counsellor from July 2014 to July 2017. Following that posting, he was appointed British Deputy High Commissioner to South Africa from August 2017 to August 2020. He has also served as the British High Commissioner to Rwanda and as non-resident British Ambassador to Burundi from 2021 to 2014.
When in London, Ben held a range of responsibilities, including working on climate change, trade and investment, and policing, and organised crime. He has worked for the UK Home Office on UK policy to counter illegal migration and to prevent trafficking in human beings, and also served at the UK Permanent Representation to the EU in Brussels for several years, representing the UK in multilateral negotiations focused on those issues. Ben was awarded the Order of the British Empire by Her Majesty the Queen in 2009 for his service to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Great to have you with us, Ben. Welcome to the morning show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Ben.
Let's get straight into it. In what way would you like to express how you feel about the coronation of King Charles III today?
Well, I think, as your correspondent said, it's a day of celebration, really, and not just for the UK, but for members of the Commonwealth. And I think, the Crown has a global reach, and we're really pleased and privileged that so many people are interested and so many people will be watching. But it really is a day of joy and celebration, and that's what we'll see today.
All right, Ben. The late Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, commanded, immense respect and influence globally. Yes. She was well loved. How do you think that her son, King Charles, will play a similar role, in a global, in a global economy, so to speak?
Well, I mean, he's been preparing for this role for 70 years, and he's been watching his late mother, the Queen, in action and understanding the impact that she's had. And of course, he'll do the role, and he's doing the role in his own way. But I think his reach, his understanding of the countries that he's visited, of course, he's been to Nigeria 4 times as Prince of Wales, and his connection with people and with world leaders, I think, is very real and very important. And I think what he'll bring to the role, to be honest, is that passion for the things that he cares about: climate change, the environment, young people, and making a difference in the world. So I think he will have that reach in a different way, but certainly in his own way.
And how important would you say the British monarchy today is in the global scheme of things? And I say this against that, like you said, it's been 70 years since Queen Elizabeth was sworn in as the Queen of England, and so much has changed in the space of 70 years. Back in 1953, I would say the UK had closer relations with the countries that were under the British Empire. There was still that respect and regard for the monarchy that maybe isn't as strong as it is today. And there's been so much happening, Brexit being a great example. So how important is the British monarchy now against this backdrop of what the world looks like today?
I think it's incredibly important. I mean, if you think of the UK, the Crown is really the anchor for our constitution and for how we see the world and how we operate. So in truth, I think it's still more important in many ways. But I think, as you allude to, so much has changed. I think the Crown itself is a dynamic institution. I think the ceremony today will reflect not just the important history and culture and pageantry of the UK, but that change, the diversity of the UK. Our links to the world are different now. So many Commonwealth countries are attending. He's still being crowned as head of state of 14 other realms, in fact, but so many other countries now are republics. And I think the nice thing about the way in which the King has approached all of these issues with a spirit of openness. The world is changing, we're changing with the world, but the Crown is something that is continuous and dynamic in that sense.
All right, you've been in Nigeria since 2020, I believe, right? I mean, of course, that's what we read earlier. So as an envoy, how do you think that today's occasion, momentous occasion, of course, that it is, and the reign of the new king, how do you think that it will impact the bilateral relationship between the two countries, Nigeria and Great Britain?
I think we're very lucky to have a king for whom Nigeria is so close. 4 visits, his first in 1990, his most recent in 2018. which he shocked and surprised many people with his command of pidgin as well, which I will not try and imitate because I'm not as good as him. His many passions extend, as I say, to the environment and climate change. He's connected to so many environmental organisations here in Nigeria. Queen Camilla is also patron of the Mirabel Centre, the Sexual Assault Referral Centre, and cares very deeply about those issues. And I think the connection, as I say, is very strong, very real. I'm sure as his reign continues, he will look to try and further those links. And for so many people in Nigeria, Duke of Edinburgh Awards, the Prince's Trust has had an impact and is having an impact. And we were touched by the outpouring of emotion as Queen Elizabeth died and at her passing. And I think we'll be touched as well by the outpouring of emotion today and across the world for the King as he's crowned.
Thanks, Ben. And you know, we spoke about the changes that have happened over 70 years, but even over the past 10 years, there have been changes. And different polls always say different things. But I was taking a look at a YouGov poll that said that as of April, only 36% of 18 to 24-year-old Britons want to keep the monarchy. In 2013, that number was 72% for the same age bracket. What would you say has changed in 10 years?
I think people know Prince Charles and they know the King in a different way. And I think the last decade, firstly, I think the last decade we saw the excellent and amazing public service of the Queen. And I think the Crown has been a model of public service, selfless public service, and she epitomised that. I think over the last 10 years and in recent times, people have come to know the King as a person, much more approachable, much more personable than people might have expected, perhaps. And I think that's something that people have grown used to. And I think people are also looking for that sort of continuity in life. And as I say, within the UK, the Crown is that symbol of continuity. So, I mean, TV as well helps, I'm sure. There's lots of TV shows about the Crown, which I'm sure people have been watching, which of course are not. But nonetheless, I think there's real interest in the people now. And I think that's really, really important.
All right, interesting. But I'll ask you to just pause a bit while we'll, of course, delve more into the significance of today's, occasion. All right, the celebration of the coronation of King Charles III by the British High Commission in Lagos, Nigeria, was a gathering of eminent personalities at the Deputy High Commissioner's residence. Our rights correspondent, Ozzy Okoli, reports.
It is British first coronation in 70 years. Here in Nigeria, coronation of King Charles III kick-started with celebration activities involving diplomats, friends and well-wishers of the United Kingdom.
Well, the coronation of King Charles III and the Queen is, it's the first time it's happened in 70 years, so obviously it's historic in that sense. And I think it's really, really important to celebrate those things. And we're really lucky to have someone like King Charles who has such a strong connection to Nigeria. He's been here 4 times, most recently in 2018, including with the Queen Consort, soon to be Queen tomorrow. So I think for us it's a really important thing to have someone who's so connected to Nigeria, to Nigerian people, and to be honest, who enjoys Nigeria and celebrates Nigeria. When he came in 2018, he shocked the crowd with his display of pigeon, for example, and he's a real character in that sense.
And of course, Nigeria has close ties with the UK, and of course, we are part of them, and they are part of us. So in this vein, we've come to rejoice and to say and wish them well. And of course, as they say, long live the King. So we hope Charles will surpass that of his mom's, which is an African prayer, that you live longer than your parents. So we are looking at somewhere within the hundreds.
The coronation is the first of a British king since 1937, after the death of Queen Elizabeth II last September. Celebrating the coronation in Lagos marks a new beginning in the United Kingdom's enthronement of King Charles III.
King Charles should definitely be celebrated, as far as I'm concerned, as an environmentalist, because he pioneered the environmental movement in England and in Europe way, way, way back. He was advocating conservation. He was advocating harmony with nature. He even wrote books about it. I personally was influenced by his father, who actually came to Nigeria and helped us to set up the Nigerian Conservation Foundation, where I am a council member, and also very influenced by him with a statement he gave when he was a prince a few years back, when he said that if we lose the battle against climate change, we shall be bequeathing unto our children a poisoned chalice. He's a staunch environmentalist. And now to have this very, very prominent position, you can be very, very sure that he will use it effectively to make sure that we start living in harmony with nature. I love it.
Aside from the usual exchange of pleasantries, socialization, cocktails, and the Deputy High Commissioner's speech, the coronation celebration was crowned with a fashion show amid goodwill messages.
Something like this for me is, it's like a cross-culture, you know, because I represent both cultures. I was born and grew up in England. I'm Nigerian and I'm married to His Majesty the Ooni of Ife, who is the king of the Yorubas and the custodian of the Yoruba culture. So it's a very, very significant, you know, event for me. And I would like to wish His Majesty King Charles and Queen Consort Queen Camilla best wishes. May their reign be prosperous. May it bring greatness to the United Kingdom. And I wish them best wishes from His Imperial Majesty the Ooni of Ife.
The Deputy High Commission, the High Commission obviously is duty bound to celebrate what is an incredibly important event. The last time this was done was 70 years ago when Queen Elizabeth II was crowned Queen of England. It's fitting, you know, a country must celebrate its history, must celebrate its traditions, and that's what they're doing today. As for the ties between Nigeria and Britain, I mean, I think we all know the ties. They were once our colonial rulers, and you know, we are part of the Commonwealth, so there remain strong commercial, business ties, cultural ties. And I guess in the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen quite an influx of Nigerians into Britain. So those ties are even even stronger now. So yes, so I will say, long live the king.
With King Charles III and his wife Camilla said to be crowned King and Queen of the United Kingdom and the other Commonwealth realms in an elaborate Christian ceremony steeped in solemn ritual of more than a millennium of history at London's Westminster Abbey, we say, God save the King. Ozio Okoli, Arise News, Lagos.
Ozio Okoli reporting there last night from the Deputy High Commissioner's residence here in Lagos. It looked like a great event. Again, I'm sorry that I couldn't make it. And, you know, let's head back to speaking about this coronation. And I'd like to get into the controversies a bit because as grand as this event is, there have been several controversies that to some extent are overshadowing the main day. One of which is the calls for stolen diamonds to be returned. The latest call coming for the Star of Africa to be returned. Thousands of signatures on change.org for that petition, the Kohinoor as well. What effect, if any, is this likely to have on the coronation and events today?
So on the coronation, I don't think it will have a direct impact, but I think the history of the monarchy certainly is something that, again, I think King Charles is very open to discussing. These are not issues that he's trying to conceal or to hide, or the other links, for example, that people are suggesting that may be there. So I think he and the monarchy are a much more open institution in respect to these discussions and these questions. But I think today, if I'm honest, all of the controversies may be there, but I think the ceremony itself will be so intense, so amazing. I don't think much will overshadow it. It's very difficult, I think, to overshadow something quite so spectacular. But I think it's right and it's important in a democracy as the UK is for these issues to be raised and aired. And in some ways, I celebrate the fact that people can talk about the controversies. It's important they do.
But at the back of that call for the Star of Africa, you know, to be returned to South Africa, of course, is the larger demand and concerns for artifacts that were pillaged, that were, you know, if you like, stolen from Africa to be returned. I know that to an extent, a number of works are being returned, particularly those of the Beni bronzes. Do you think that this is something that will be of interest to the king going forward? Well, I mean, the king is a head of state, but of course he tries to stay away from issues that may be considered political and quite reasonably to stand above those issues. I mean, he has a strong interest, I think, in the cultural exchange between countries. But those specific questions around museums, some museums, as you say, are returning artifacts, others on loan, others are taking different approaches.
I'm sure he will leave to the government to try and consider in cooperation and dialogue with the Nigerian government, as is happening at the moment. And I think that's important and right. And the important thing about the monarchy is it stands above those issues. It's there to be the check and balance in some ways, but also to provide the constitution with the stability and rock that it needs. And I'm sure he'll be very careful to ensure that continues.
All right.
Fair enough. And listening to that report that was put together by Ozi, Mr. Desmond Majakodumi, great environmentalist here in Nigeria, said that King Charles pioneered the environment movement in the UK and Europe. I'd like to expand on this statement a bit. What have his contributions been?
I think, well, first of all, I think he spoke about the environment as a public figure, as he was, in a way that for a long time I think political leaders found more difficult. So I think the cause of climate change, the cause of the environment, he spoke about it in a way that was much more difficult for politicians at the time. I think secondly, practically, he's been encouraging not just reforestation, but trying to ensure that activists around the world have a voice that's heard. And we saw at COP26, the conference on climate change in the UK, he himself was present, made a point of being so, greeting world leaders, trying to galvanise the energy and the commitment. And one of the things, of course, about the monarchy is that political leaders come and go, but the monarchy's there, and they are the continuous voice, and they see these things over time. And I think he's been able to project that very, very importantly. So I think Mr. Desmond's absolutely right, and Elifasi Park's a fantastic institution, which I think in itself is really, really important here in Lagos. But I think the important thing now is to try and galvanise action. I'm sure the King, in the right way, will continue to try to do that.
All right. I mean, I like the fact that twice you made reference to the fact that he's been here 4 times.
4 times.
You know, the last being in 2018. And the fact that he spoke, pidgin, just like he did, I think, in 2012 when he went to Papua New Guinea. You don't want to say what the king said, but I'll repeat it to you. What he said was, "God don't butter my bread," which, as you know, was not really a literal thing. It wasn't about bread and butter. It's about the fact that God has granted, my wish. Do you think that he was being prophetic, in 2018 when he said, God has granted my wish?
Just a few years later.
And now he's king.
Well, I mean, it's interesting is that the first emotion he had, of course, when he became king was sadness because his mother had died. And he said himself, you wait for this moment for 70 years, but in fact it's the moment of profound sadness in my life, but it's also a moment of duty. And I think that model of public service, which he obviously followed and we all admired, I think he saw exactly what it was at that moment. His duty was to step forward and step up. And of course, he's been king since that point.
That's right.
So yes, I mean, I think it must be an incredible thing to be born and to know that you will be king. That will be your role, but to prepare for all that time and not quite know when it's going to happen. And I think the dignity and the grace with which he's taken the role on, given those circumstances, I think is remarkable, really, to be honest. And just on the environment, actually, when I actually spoke to him once myself, and the one thing we talked about, not for a long time, I won't pretend, but was climate change and the environment. And he said then it's just so important. You must remember, and I do.
That's great. And, like you said, 70 years preparing for this role, that is a long time for anyone to prepare for a role. And then you wake up one day and that day is here. I'd like to speak about what you reckon his relationship with the Prime Minister is likely to be like. King Charles has publicly taken a stand against certain things that he may not agree with. For example, the Rwanda situation with migrants being taken over to Rwanda. He's come out to say that that's something that he doesn't support. What do you reckon his relationship is going to be like with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Parliament at large?
Well, that's the fascinating thing, is that there is never a record of a meeting that the monarch ever has. So, of course, none of us will ever read the records of their conversations. And they are private conversations. And I think it was Tony Blair who said the toughest half an hour of his week or hour of his week was meeting the Queen, but he never said why. So I suspect it will be frank. The monarch has a role and the Prime Minister has a role. And I'm sure they'll respect the balance and the difference between those roles. But I'm sure it will be, because he's so engaged in the issues of the day, a proper discussion of what the needs of the British public are and the needs of the Commonwealth are, because he takes that duty very, very seriously. But in the true spirit of the British Constitution, we'll never quite know what they say to each other.
I guess so.
All right. I mean, Great Britain is changing, and I suppose that it will change more under his reign. He is a king at a time that an immigrant is the Prime Minister, a non-native is the male, of London, things would change in terms of diversity, in terms of multiculturalism. And I think that even in the speech that he will read at the coronation today, I understand that something is being inserted to say that he will be king to all faiths and stuff like that. How much do you think that as a king of a multicultural Britain, what do you think that will represent, and what will that say to his reign as somebody dealing with an Indian-born prime minister, maybe Pakistani-born, mayor of London? I mean, these are new things that are really, great, but at the same time, you wouldn't have thought that would happen 70 years ago when he started preparing.
So 70 years ago, we probably wouldn't have anticipated this, but isn't it fantastic? Isn't it fantastic? Rishi Sunak's Prime Minister, Sadiq Khan's Mayor of London, my own boss, Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, is British Sierra Leone, and his first visit was to Sierra Leone, of course, to see where his mother was born. So I think it's amazing, and I think the King will see it exactly that way, to be honest. And it's not just a celebration of diversity because diversity is nice; it's because of the strength it brings, and the quality and the talent, and it's a reflection of what Britain is today. And I think we'll see that as well. People will see the pageantry, but actually, modern Britain doesn't look like it did 70 years ago. It's modern Britain, and it is a diverse, multicultural place of all faiths. And we're an open society as well, so people can see our faults as well as our strengths. We welcome that. We think that's fantastic.
And on the screen there, we can see guests arriving at Buckingham Palace. And although this has been labelled as a scaled-down event, definitely less guests than there were in 1953. Yes. It's still a 3-day jamboree paid for by taxpayers' money, and there have been mixed opinions to that from the British public. Do you think it's fitting for the times?
I do. I mean, it is a scaled-down event, but you're right, there's still some 2,000 people who'll be there. One of my friends is there, actually, so I'm looking forward to hearing his own experience of it. But I think when you look at the value to the UK of the monarchy, not just in terms of this event, the global reach that it has, in terms of tourism, in terms of the public service they do, I think that's a very difficult thing to calculate, but I would suggest that's significantly more valuable than the cost of what will be an event that happens so rarely. So I think it's really important, not really important just to have the coronation, but to have the coronation in this way. And I think it is right to celebrate. It's unusual. I think there's 40 monarchies around the world, and none quite do this. But that's fine. We're British. We like to do it this way. And I think it is exceptional value for money, to be honest, in terms of the reach that it brings.
There's actually a value to what is, what this brings to the British economy. I think it's valued at about £2 billion, exactly in terms of tourism. But that's not where I'm going. Where I'm going is, yes, the king is there, but it's official today, but then there's no perfect person. What are the things that you think that King Charles III should work on? I know that there won't be records of meetings and stuff like that, and it's not in his 20s like his mom when she was coronated. He's in his 70s. What are the things that you think that as a man, yes, but a king, that he will need to begin to work on?
Well, woe betide me to advise a king, but I would suggest that in the 70 years that he's had to prepare, he himself has changed, and that's one of the things about living in the public eye. People have seen him change from a young man to the mature man that he is today. So I think we will see the benefit of that, and we will see the benefit of his understanding, not just of the sense of duty, the role, how his mother performed it, how he would like to perhaps adapt it to the strengths that he has. But I'm sure he has very many excellent advisors, and around him are good people, to be honest, who will help him to navigate what will be, I'm sure, some difficult circumstances at times. But the important thing, as I say, is the strength and continuity of the monarchy. Whatever happens, the waters crash over it, but it remains.
Great. All right, Ben, we are going to take a very quick break here on The Morning Show, and we will be back. Ben Llewellyn-Jones will still be with us in the studio for more. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Morning Show here on Arise News. Ben Llewellyn-Jones, the British Deputy High Commissioner in Lagos, Nigeria, is still here with us in the studio. Thanks, Ben. And we've been touching on a range of things with regards to King Charles III and his reign. And you spoke about things that he's passionate about. And I'd like to speak about the Commonwealth a bit more now, because what do you expect the Commonwealth to look like under Charles? Like you said, he's been very open about issues. At the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda last year, I know that he addressed certain countries wanting to leave the British Empire, Barbados leaving, Jamaica wanting to leave. What do you expect the Commonwealth to look like under his reign?
So, I mean, the Commonwealth is a group of countries who are welcome to be together. That it's a voluntary organisation.
Yeah.
You're not required to be a member of it. Many countries, Mozambique, Rwanda in particular, have joined, and they were never parts of the British Empire at any point. And I think the King will take that approach. He'll say, look, this is a group that can do things together. This is a group that has shared values, some shared history, of course, but actually it's about what we do into the future. And I think this is why climate change, I think, is one of the issues that he's particularly picked in respect of the Commonwealth, because the global reach of the Commonwealth means that, you know, small island states to countries that are high polluting, to countries who have some of the best solutions to the challenges of climate change, are all in one place together, without perhaps the challenge of having to agree to everything. They can find a common set of ways ahead. So I think as it's a dynamic organisation, it's changing. People will join, people will leave. But I think for him, he'll be about what it can do for people, for the peoples of the Commonwealth. And that's been his approach, to be honest, I think, up to now.
All right. We touched a bit on the things that won't really affect, today's ceremony. But there's one more thing that I would like you to touch on, which is about the protest, the anti-monarchy protest. I know that this comes up, fairly regularly, and it happens everywhere. Even here, a lot of people question the role of traditional monarchy, as of today. What do you think is at the heart of their agitation? Is it about the heritage? Is it about the fact that, you have a privileged family, very rich and everything, very influential, but then what's their role in modern government? What is at the heart of the protest?
Well, firstly, I think it's great the protest can happen. I mean, it's fantastic. It's fantastic that people can say on the day of celebration, I don't agree. I mean, that's what the UK is about. I think for those people, they're looking for something different. They believe there's a different way ahead, and I respect their right to have that opinion. What I'd say is that the importance of our democracy means that people can have a say on these issues, and all political parties in the UK who are of kind of note, and major parties in Parliament support the monarchy, and those are the parties that are gaining most votes. So I think it's important to have that right to protest. It's important people do. I'd be disturbed in some ways if everyone agreed it was a fantastic thing. But what I think is important is that the majority of people and the majority of those that are expressing an opinion today are not just celebrating, but very much in favour of the monarchy as an institution. As I say, it's a dynamic institution that's there. And I understand those comments about, who are these people, where have they come from? But actually, again, the openness today of the monarchy, not just King Charles, but of the family, is a strength again. And it means that we have a better sense of not just who they are, but what they do, and what they do for the UK, and what they do around the world. So I'm sure those people will be heard alongside others. I hope they raise a glass together at some point.
And still on the protests, on Wednesday, the changes to the Public Order Bill in the UK passed through Parliament and received royal assent from King Charles. And just for our viewers who are watching, under the new law, protesters who interfere with key national infrastructure, such as blocking roads and railways, could face 12 months behind bars, an unlimited fine, or both. Anyone locking on, in quotes, or physically attaching themselves to other people, objects, or buildings to cause serious disruption could face 6 months behind bars, an unlimited fine, or both. And police are also going to be empowered to stop and search protesters suspected of having intent to commit an offence. What do you think has led to these changes to the Public Order Bill?
Well, I think it's the scale of the ceremony today. Let's be honest. We've got a 40-minute procession from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey and then back again. I think we've got 6,000 military officers, one way or another, involved. Millions of people, and the risk of public disorder really is a security risk, but it's also a risk to that whole process, that whole ceremony. So they are exceptional measures, and I understand that passed by Parliament. Of course, anyone who is arrested has a right to defence. They can only be used proportionately. The rule of law applies in all circumstances, but I suspect it's just the circumstances of today that have made, and these are exceptional circumstances. Once every 70 years, we have a coronation.
I think it's the first time in all of our lifetimes
exactly.
we're experiencing this,
So I think they're intended to keep us all safe and to make the ceremony possible and so on. But as I say, the rule of law always applies. People will have a right to a defence, and the measures will be used proportionally in all circumstances, I'm sure.
There's a 150 million pounds budget for security alone. Does that make London, does that put it in a lockdown more or less?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that the sheer crowds will put it in something of a lockdown. I think if you're anywhere near the Mall today, which is where the procession will go, it's going to be hard to move. But if you're near the Mall, you're there for a reason. You want to be there.
Yeah.
So I think, and you know, this has been well orchestrated and planned. The coronation's today because it was planned so long, you know, months ago. So I think those people who didn't, you know, perhaps want to be involved had an opportunity to step away and or stay at home today and enjoy something else. But if you're in London, you're out about near the Mall, you probably want to be there and be part of it. And I'm sure many people have got. In fact, there's been people out, I think, since Monday, queuing and getting the best spots and so on. So it's incredible, really. And the King was out, I think, yesterday, greeting some of those people to say hi and thanks, and Prince of Wales and so on. So I think it's and we've got the concert tomorrow. And on Monday, of course, the King has encouraged us all to do kind of the help out, basically. Get out there and do what you can for your community, getting people involved in volunteering and charity. So, yes, not a lockdown, but perhaps a voluntary getting together, should we say, of people who want to enjoy something very, very special.
Our own Tiwa Savage will be part of the concert, by the way, tomorrow.
Yes, fantastic. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Brilliant. And yeah, absolutely. Another example of a celebration of, you know, not just the Commonwealth, but of talent. I mean, she's amazing, right? So it's fantastic she's part of it.
And the King is expected to wear military uniform today, rather than the more traditional breeches and silk stockings worn by kings before him. What does this signify, and why do you think King Charles III has opted for this?
I think again, it's part of the dynamism of the monarchy. I mean, that kind of outfit perhaps had a place then. Today doesn't.
No place now.
Not quite as much of a place. But you know, he is as head of state. He's the head of our military, and indeed, the sheer number of soldiers and officers who are involved in today's ceremony is a part of that expression of the crown. And I'm a crown servant, for example. I'm appointed by the King. That's who's my boss ultimately. So I think you know, it'll be a reflection of that, and again the change of the changes in the monarchy as well. But it would have been quite something to see him in that outfit, I'm sure. But I'm sure he looked splendid today.
All right, Ben, before we let you go, let's talk a bit more about the ties between the two, you know, countries, Nigeria, Great Britain, the things that, you know, bring us together, the things that we're looking forward to. You're the key man in Lagos. We know what you observe, we know the things that you see. What are the areas of interest that you think that Nigeria and Britain can concentrate on, so that, you know, things that can bring us more together for mutual benefit?
So the scale of the UK-Nigeria relationship is massive. You know, through our people, through our history, through our culture, our cultures. You know, my particular focus is on trade and investment, trying to make sure more British businesses do business in Nigeria, create more jobs in Nigeria, trying to make sure that more Nigerians can do business in the UK as well, to be honest. And it's really, really important. So I'm sure we can do more in that respect. I always say, you know, however well we're doing, there's always more to do, and there's always more jobs to create and to get involved in that kind of work. So, you know, my role, our role, the High Commissioner's role is really just to make sure we do everything we can to maximise all of those amazing ties. But trade and investment, economic growth, I'm sure we should really prioritise and move ahead.
And lastly, you know, you've said the King has already visited Nigeria 4 times as Prince. Are you expecting him to visit again as King now?
I would very much like him to. I suspect he's going to get through today and have a few other things in his diary. But at some point, I'm sure. You know, I was looking at pictures last night, or photos last night, of President Obasanjo at his home in Gloucester, not even in London, in Gloucester, looking very happy. And the King looked very happy as well. So I'm sure it's on his mind to come back, and at some point he will. But I couldn't tell you quite when.
All right, Ben, Deputy High Commissioner in Lagos for the British High Commission. We want to thank you so much. I'm sure it's going to be a great day, and of course we will enjoy it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.